Carolyn Dube here. What's my play for today? Well, today it's all about PanPastels and my new stencil, Ladders, from over at Stencil Girl. Now, this stencil does come with 3 in 1, and I've clearly hit these with some spray ink. As they were sitting on the counter, they were turned this way, and I looked at them and I thought, hey, I think these would work as a ladder. Not as a ladder, as a fence. These ladders could be fences, and I'm going to play around with that. So I did, and I ended up creating, anyway, you'll see how it works in the video, but I'm playing with PanPastels, so you know I'm going to have to seal them, and I like things completely sealed so that I can keep working more layers on it, so you'll see how that's done. And also, too, how I use the stencil to cheat to help me build some depth and perspective as I added in another stencil. And of course, there's an oops. You know me. There has to be one of those, and you'll see how I handled that. Well, anyway, enough of my talking. Enjoy the video. So I picked the ladder that looked most like a fence to me. And this one, turned on its side, just absolutely says rolling hills, fun outdoor fence. So I'm going to use that one. I'm going to go into PanPastels with a cosmetic sponge. And what I'm doing is holding the stencil down in place and then just rubbing the cosmetic sponge against it. Notice that I'm staying around the fence ladder thing. I'm not going too much farther than where it is. I'm also dipping, seeing if it wiggles like that, I just line it back up. Or I could actually, I don't know, tape it down. So I've got one done there. Now I'm going to put one below it. And this is why I didn't want the PanPastel part to go too much farther than where I was actually working, because I knew I wanted to add one below it, one above it. The colors, you might notice there's a little variation in those. I'm dipping between multiple colors of the greens of the PanPastels. They mix and blend beautifully. So I'm going to slide the stencil over, that way it looks like it's a different piece of the fence and not just the same thing repeated, stacked on top of each other, one and then the other. And you've probably noticed some areas of the green are darker than others. That wasn't my intention. That was absolutely an oops. But they are outstanding opportunities presenting suddenly, because that color variation that I hadn't really planned on will end up making it look like different patches or shading of grass and that kind of thing. So a total bonus for me there. Now I'm going to do the sky in blue. And all I'm doing is grabbing a clean cosmetic sponge, or one that's only been used in blue, and then I'm just smearing it all around. Just rubbing it in, sort of buffing it in to get a nice even sort of sky blue color to it. Okay, so big technical problem here. When I went back to edit this video, I saw that when I'm sealing the PanPastels, none of it's coming through on camera. So I want to explain this to you so that you'll know what I'm doing. So when I say I've sealed this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to take a mini mister, and the reason why I use something small, I could use something much larger, but I tend to only want it for one session. So whatever I'm going to use in that session, which usually is about one of these full, because it's glue that I'm sticking through a spray bottle. Now, I've had spray inks clog on me, so I can imagine that glue is going to mess up a sprayer over time. So when I'm all done, I actually empty out any leftovers if I don't use it all up, put some fresh water in it, and then pump it through quite a few times to make sure I've cleaned out the inner workings of this so there isn't glue sitting in it. And then I put some more water back in the bottle just so it stores it wet, keeps a little moisture in there, just in case there's any glue left behind. I'm at least keeping little bits of it wet. Well, what do I mix in here? I use 50% water and 50% really runny glue. Whatever really runny glue you've got, give it a try and see if it works for you. When I say if it works for you, if it seals it the way you want. I ended up using, this is Fluid Matte Medium from Golden. Any runny glue has worked for me with this. I tend to go with what I have. But the key here is it's got to be runny, because you're going to stick it through a spray bottle. Half water, half runny glue, and then shake it up really, really well before you hit it with the first pump. Because if you get a clump of glue go up the inner workings of this, it's a clump of glue. So it has potential to really sort of trash your sprayer. So that's how I seal these. When I seal it, I hit it with some mist. Depending on how much I want it sealed is how much I put on it. So if I'm going to work a layer really, really, really hard, then what I'm going to do is actually put quite a bit of this on. I might even put 2 or 3 coats on. And if it's not something that I'm going to have to work that hard, then it might just be one misting. And I do let it dry completely, which you know for me is hard to do. I do let it dry completely before I go on to the next layer. So now, back to the play with the PanPastels. So I hit this with some of the sealer, and the way that I can check that I've sealed it well enough is I kind of gently rub a clean Kleenex on it, and I see how much of it comes up. The parts where it was darker and I had a lot more of the pan pastel on it, those places don't seal as quickly because there's more stuff to seal. And for the most part though, this is sealed well enough for what I want to do. It's not going to move and smear as I bring in the next layer. Well, I'm going to bring in this tree stencil from Kathy Nichols, and I absolutely love this stencil. It's a playful, whimsical tree, just what I'd want in this field for me, and I want it to be behind one of the fences. Well, if I'd thought about this ahead of time, I would have had this all planned out and done the tree first and then da-da-da, but I didn't plan this out. I'm just playing around. So to fix that, I'm going to use the stencil to help me cheat. So I'm going to grab the same fence stencil that I used, and I am going to cover up the white area. So I'm going to put that stencil right on top. I got to figure out where it was again, and you'd think it would be easy to figure this out, but for some reason today my brain is just not connecting on that. And so eventually I'll figure out to flip the stencil over and then it will line up. There we go. I got it now. I'm going to leave that in place, and because I want it to really stay, I am going to grab some not double-sided tape. This is low tack tape or repositionable tape called artist tape. And you can use any repositionable tape. And I'm just going to hold it in place somewhere so that it will stay, because I'm going to put another stencil right on top of it. So I've got the tree stencil taped right in there, and now what I'm going to do is use a color that frankly I don't use that often, which are the browns. And since I'm not sure exactly how they look, I'm going to test out the color there on that scrap paper to make sure that I'm happy with that kind of brown for what I want for my tree trunk. Then I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to do my tree trunk. I'm not trying to do the whole tree with brown because, well, just the trunk is brown. All those fun whimsical things in that tree, that is calling to me for all sorts of color. Now, because I did tape the tree down, I can actually sneak and take a look at things and see how it's going by just lifting up the stencil and then looking underneath it to see if it's what I want it to do. Now the question is, how far do I go with the brown? Where do I stop? I'm going to stop right there, really happy with how that looks for the tree. And now it's time to add in some color. And I'm using cosmetic sponges with this. I tend to keep one cosmetic sponge per color. Now you can go and wash your colors and rinse them out, but that's a lot of cleaning and work, and I'm not that keen on that. I am working in a small area here, and I want to not have to mask off different parts of the stencil but still have different parts of it different colors. So my cheat around that is I just cut the cosmetic sponges into really little bits. Rather than working with a big cosmetic sponge, I'm just going to cut it down to the size that I need. So nice and little so I can get right in there. Now those pan pastels that I have over there, those are pearlescent pan pastels. So they've got a little bit of shimmer to them. And I didn't want to do the whole thing in shimmer. I just want little bits and pops of it here and there. So I'm going to be combining some of the shimmer and some of the non-shimmer pan pastels just to create a really soft, subtle, sort of just little oomph to it. Now, of course, on camera, it's hard for you to see exactly all the oomph of the pearlescence, but there is a nice shimmer to them, I promise. And everything is going really, really well here with the tree. I'm loving the colors that I'm playing with. It's totally getting that feel that I was hoping for. But I gotta tell you, there's an oops coming. Oh yeah, big time. Sometimes if you don't plan things out, you have to know how to deal with an oops, because it is going to be an oops that when I lift up the stencil, it doesn't look the way I thought it would. And you know it though, if there's an oops, there's a way to fix it, because every oops is an outstanding opportunity presenting suddenly. Now, as I go and check this, when I think I'm all done, you're going to see my head sort of pop into the frame for a second, or at least the back of my head. And that's me just giving a nice big old blow here to push off any loose pan pastels. That way it's ready for me to seal. So what I'm going to do, you actually do get to see this one actually came on camera a little bit. There's my mini mister filled with half watery running glue and half water. And I am just going to hit it and then let it dry. So my problem is the tree just doesn't stand out. I need to somehow fill in all around that tree. But pan pastels will often smear if you don't seal them, which is why I sealed this one really well, because I knew I wanted to work around it, but I don't want to work that carefully. So to get into the little areas, I'm actually grabbing one of the tools, one of the knife tools that are actually from Pan Pastel, and there's a little cover that goes on top of that so that you can switch it out to different colors, that kind of thing. and I'm just going to go and fill in and make the outline of this tree stand out and pop a little bit more. And while I'm doing that, I have a favor to ask. If you've been enjoying this video, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up or a like. And if you've got friends that you think would enjoy it, I'd love it if you'd share it with them. If you'd like to see more of my videos, subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you'll never miss when I have a new video come out. And of course, I'd love it if you popped over to my blog at acolorfuljourney.com and said hello. I've got a free newsletter over there that always has some kind of downloadable treat or goodie waiting for you every time it comes out. Well, now I've got that tree about where I want it. I'm pretty happy with it. You can see I'm kind of changing the covers a little bit on that knife just to flip into different colors, but now it's just the way I want it. I did seal it a couple of times, and that is now completely dry, but it needs something more. I need a word. Well, what word is going to go up there? Discover, because I've had such fun discovering what these ladders can do when turned on their side and turned into a fence and playing around with PanPastels. So that word happens to be in just the perfect spot on the stencil, so all I had to do was line it up on the edges of the paper and it's going to be in the perfect spot for me. I'm feeling very lucky today. And I'm going to come in and use the last of that little Mr. bottle of sealer, and I'm going to seal that word, and I'm going to call this page finished. Thanks for joining me today, and thanks for being a part of this colorful journey.